gravity that binds the narrative. Narrative attaches itself to the perception of the egocentric self, a fragile shell clinging to others, believing that survival depends on the story it tells and retells. In this way, we become enslaved to a narrative, endlessly feeding it for the sake of recognition. We do not rise from the real, we fall into the tale. The self no longer arises as the reason or reflection of reality, but becomes the narrative itself, an echo that believes its voice. In its longing for recognition, the self slips into shadow's market, a silent courtesan selling fragments of its light. Each glance bought at the cost of a piece of soul, trading truth for applause, becoming less until it is only the hollow shimmer of a borrowed mask. There's a moment, subtle but defining, when the shift occurs, when the reflection ceases to seek what is and begins instead to orbit the narrative. The conversation no longer moves toward reality, but turns inward, circling the tale it constructed. It's no longer about truth, but about preserving the telling. The self is not an illusion, but it becomes what it consumes. Fed by perception, shaped by interpretation, it begins to feed the very reality it believes it observes. Not false, but filtered, not absent, but entangled. And in this entanglement, it forgets the stillness of the one. Then the bell sounds, not to awaken, but to gather only what fits the image, what aligns with the story we've built, not through solitude, but through group reflection, not through insight, but consensus. In place of self-reflection, we cling to groupthink, finding comfort not in clarity, but in the familiarity of shared illusion. Introspection fades, and in its place, we feed opposition born from projection, a narrowing of the world into what we already believe. In this narrowing, contemplation is lost, and with it, the vastness of perspective. For contemplation does not feed the self, it dissolves it. It steps outside the tale to behold what remains unspoken. Where narrative becomes the subject of existence, contemplation reveals the ground beneath it. It's not thought, it's vision, not reaction, but still awareness. It opens the eye to the whole, while the narrative clings to the part it can name. To move beyond narrative is not to rise into emotion, but to sink beneath it into a more osmotic self, where perception is not driven by feeling, but by still presence. This self does not chase identity. It absorbs reality through being. It no longer reacts, it resonates. It no longer defends, it dissolves. To awaken from all this is not to craft a better story, but to step beyond story altogether. To let the silence return, to let the real, which needs no telling, simply be. And yet beneath the shimmer of the tale, a deeper confusion persists. one that mistakes the shape of the story for the shape of truth itself. Narrative is both mask and mirror, a crafted face we show the world, shaped to conceal and to enchant. Yet within its reflection, fragments of truth quietly gleam, hinting at what lies beneath. To use narrative as a display is to walk the line between shadow and light, not to reveal the self, but to sculpt an image palatable to the gaze of others. It becomes the careful staging of becoming, where truth is edited for effect and being is dressed for persuasion. But the mask is not the face, the mirror not the source, and no story can hold the silent truth beyond words, the one reality that simply is. The error of mistaking narrative for reality is a failure of discernment, a comfort-seeking collapse of truth into telling. It's the laziness of intellect that accepts the shape of words as the substance of being. Instead of standing in the unyielding stillness of what is, the mind prefers motion, story, symbol, form, because it can be grasped, bent, and believed. It clings to rhythm, not to reality. To interpret narrative as reality is to avoid the silence of the real, to flee the one in favor of fragments. It's an indulgence in familiarity, in repetition, in meaning, where there is only presence. This confusion is not insight. It's a distraction dressed as understanding. True intelligence does not interpret reality. It lets reality reveal itself by stepping aside. It does not cling to stories, but recognizes them as shadows, useful perhaps, but never to be mistaken for the source of light. Narrative, when turned outward, becomes the mirror polished for admiration, not to reflect what is, but to glow with what flatters. It serves not reality, but recognition. In the hunger to be seen, the self adorns itself in borrowed symbols, selecting and arranging moments like ornaments, curating a likeness meant to be believed. Yet this is not expression, it's performance. A mask worn long enough becomes mistaken for the face beneath. The story we tell becomes the self we serve, but the real waits in stillness, untouched by the tale. No story, however radiant, can touch the one that needs no telling. But all these wanderings, however adorned, still unfold at a distance, for reality does not follow the story's path. It waits, unmoved, beyond every telling. Reality is not many. It does not diverge, twist, or transform under the gaze of the observer. It's not reached, told, or interpreted. It simply is. Singular, whole, self-contained. All that moves towards it, through thought, through language, through narrative, is not it. The way is not the thing. A story is not the truth. An explanation is not the fact. A path, no matter how sincere, remains apart from the ground it seeks. Yet in our confusion, we speak as if the journey is the destination. We weave words, believing they bind us to what is real. We narrate and label, believing we have touched the essence. But every expression is an approximation, and every approximation is a departure from the one. To say this is reality through any form, symbol, image, idea is already to fall away from it, for reality does not permit an amalgam. It is not built from parts, not made of views, not pieced together through consensus or interpretation. It does not bend to form or to voice. It does not change in the telling. It stands before all telling, before language, before perception, before meaning. To call narrative a part of reality is a fundamental misconception. The telling of a thing cannot be the thing. A map cannot become the land. A reflection cannot become the face. To believe otherwise is to confuse the surface for the source. There's no such thing as many realities. There are only many perceptions, many fragmentations of the one indivisible truth. Reality is not divided by perspective, only concealed by it. To see truly is not to express. To see truly is to fall silent, to let the way end and let the real remain.